When you have a godlike religion called economy, whether it's Samuelson or Bernanke, both of whom have written textbooks incorporating this idea, accepting this received idea, which I count as almost primitive, pre-Socratic, pre-Newtonian, and indigestible, almost grotesque and obscene when you see it, and when you see its operations, especially as in the case of Mr. Rothschild, where he positioned himself literally in a certain place and gave out dismay when he should have been exulting at the British victory at the Battle of Waterloo, when he received news from his agent that it was the British. And his look of dismay conveyed the feeling by deception that they'd lost, when in fact they'd won. So there was a rapid sell-off, and he quietly bought up 90% of English manufacturing and factories and institutions and establishments of the day. He was very rich before that and fabulously rich after. Now, how can it be that either a rich family or a series of very small series of rich families, constituting less than 1% of the human race, end up in themselves owning 90% of the world's wealth? It is because they have positioned themselves at the end, at a certain place in that infinite serried economic theory. It's the economic theory at fault. Situations like the obvious unfairness of such a small group of inner circle families owning the vast majority of the world's wealth must be tackled at the level of the theory, and we must defeat and kill and murder and slit the throat of the theory, not of the people involved. You know, that's revolutionary and can be only fought by, well, what would they do? They would field mercenary dupes to attack you if you were really setting about that. Now we must attack the theory underlying it, and we can see that they themselves are in danger from the continued operations of a theory that cannot work. It seems to work. It has seemed to work in their favour for so long, but eventually it does not work. It itself collapses. It itself dies, if you like. So it's with a concern for everyone that I proceed with this theoretical development, involving all of us, involving myself, everyone who might feel that they were opposed to me. It is in all of our interest to consider another finite, realistically based, logical, reasonable economic system. And we must develop this with the idea that exceptions do not make the rule. We do not extrapolate out from sentimental ideology into broad general cases. The things must stand up and work in bulk with the big numbers involved and on an ongoing basis, generation after generation after generation. They must be sustainable economic ideas. And we begin with the intuition in regard to taxes, cracking the taxes. that at the 10% level of personal income taxes, people feel that they would like to avoid these taxes. So tax avoidance becomes an intuitive response to any tax rate beyond 10%. I would like to say almost that this was an absolute tax intuition, and that the tax intuitors were correct, that taxes beyond that are heinous and are the crime, not the avoidance of the crime is being a crime. So we cannot make normal citizens, the intuitive behaviour of normal citizens, a crime, when in actual fact the law, in this case, the tax law, is the crime. That is what we are maintaining as one of the bases for proceeding. One, there are many. A reference underlying all of this are my other videos and remarks on population economy, and other videos on the limits to taxation, the limits to government, and so on and so forth. So please look at those to supplement what I'm trying also to summarise here, and to maintain the theme of cracking the taxes, the limit to big government and the nanny state, the postmodern political constitution that we all must live with. And I would like to propose that an O'Sullivan limit be established for, in any one tax generation, that 50% real rate of tax is the outermost limit, with no profit to anyone. Though why anybody would volunteer to be on one side of that equation and not the other when there's no profit in it, but all the hard work, is beyond me. So we must build in a profit margin into a constitution. A 21st century postmodern constitution must include the tax limit of a government, for any government, anywhere in the world, in it, for it to be plausible, for it to be realistic, for it to be, for all the other freedoms and liberties and so on that these things declare, to be real, to be funded, basically, on an ongoing basis. There's no point funding something or overfunding something when the funding of it is going to kill what creates the funding. There is no point in that at all, and this is exactly the situation we are in today. It's an urgent situation. It is a crisis. We have recently suffered an earthquake in New Zealand, and that is going to hit us quite hard economically for a number of years ahead. However, what I'm talking about here is in actual fact a bigger crisis than the Christchurch earthquake. So please take note of it on that basis, that the crisis you are involved in your normal regular tax paying activity, is a bigger crisis economically in all the households of New Zealand and in all the households of all the governments in all the countries of the world than some great disaster within the borders of your country. Now that is for one generation. So that's the O'Sullivan limit, as I'm calling it here. I want my name to be attached to this. I think it's fair. I have discovered it, and this is right. So, but in terms of ongoing generations, I want it to be called the Phillip O'Sullivan limit. The Phillip O'Sullivan limit, because within one generation, yes, you can go 50-50 for a time if the people can bear it. I don't think they can. I certainly can't at the moment, and I want it ended as quickly as possible. And I think the rich do too, and the middle classes and the working classes, if they knew what they were paying and how it was being paid, how it was being configured that they pay. Revolution would be a mild response. But we are now surrounded by all kinds of deflecting and distracting media, videos, TV, YouTube, and so on and so forth, that blur the kind of distress that people might otherwise have. It confuses them. There are so many things to be fused together that there is a confusion of ideas. It's very hard to see a track of ideas, of compelling and central ideas in the core of one's life, core of one's economic life, financial life, and so on, and how that is at the core of everybody else's common life. And this is what I'm on about. Now, across the generations, this reduces rather drastically to 20%. Again, from 50 you go down to 25%, half of that, to maintain it generation on generation on generation. 40 years, 40 years, 40 years, 120 years to give yourself the slope of profit, of tax sustainability and so on. You can shoot it up temporarily for a while, but you must then go below the line and give a reduction for an equivalent length of time to balance it out. But if you don't do that, you will just collapse and that'll be it. It will self-correct, but in a drastic way, an unmanaged way. I'm suggesting there must be a managed way, at least theoretically, to have a managed mindset, or a set of thinking tools to approach this. So the Phillip O'Sullivan limit is 20%, of which personal income